Could Vince McMahon be set to return to WWE creative in 2023? Well, the answer is yes, and we've got the very latest details as to why. Jay White, his future with New Japan Pro Wrestling has been speculated on amid links to WWE. We've got the very latest on his status with New Japan. Money in the Bank is headed to the O2 Arena in London in July of this year. But why was that location chosen by WWE? We've got the very latest details as to why. A former NXT superstar is set to return to the company. Sheamus and Drew McIntyre revealed their tag team name, raising a few eyebrows, and NXT tag team Pretty Deadly make their main roster debuts on live events this weekend. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of World Wrestling Entertainment. Of course, still the biggest story in WWE is the return of Vince McMahon to the board of directors of the company as the executive chairman. Now, as of right now, he's not the CEO as he was previously. He's not the head of creative as he was previously when he retired back in July of last year. Filling those positions, of course, are Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan, who are serving as co-CEOs, whilst Triple H is the head of creative, being the chief content officer of the company. But there is a feeling now that Vince is back and he's surrounded by board of directors that he's brought back to the company, namely Michelle Wilson and George Barrios, as well as other board of directors set to come in, that he could be returning to creative in the near future, or at least at some point in 2023, amid all of these discussions about a possible sale of the company. Vince McMahon is back on the WWE board of directors, but there may be more to his return than simply facilitating a sale of the company and negotiating media rights fees. Using his power as majority owner, McMahon put himself and former WWE presidents George Barrios and Michelle Wilson back on the company's board of directors, disposing of Joe Ellen Lyons Dillon, Jeffrey R. Speed and Alan M. Wexler in the process. Upon McMahon's return to the company, two further board members resigned of their own volition, those being Manjit Singh, the one who was heading up the board's investigation into McMahon and his alleged misconduct, sexual misconduct that is, and Ignacy Lahoud. According to McMahon, his intention upon returning is to facilitate a sale of WWE, and as reported by CNBC, WWE has hired investment banking company JP Morgan to assist with the sale of World Wrestling Entertainment. However, there could be a lot more to this story, and several people are starting to think there could be more to this, and there could be a much bigger and grander plan at work here by the 77-year-old. McMahon has changed bylaws to ensure that no sale and no media rights deals can be completed by WWE without his approval. Now, that was always kind of the case anyway. That's how he got his way back into the company. He essentially said, as majority owner and as having the majority of the voting power within the company, if you try to sell the company, if you try to negotiate any new media rights fees, which of course is going to be the case this year because all of the contracts come up, I will veto it, essentially saying, I'm holding the company ransom. Now, when he returned, as I mentioned, he changed these company bylaws, so now officially they have to go through him. Before he was holding the company to hostage and ransom. Now it's part of his job as executive chairman. He has essentially put himself in the key position of negotiating the deals, which means he can negotiate whatever terms he wishes, which means if he wants to be put back in charge of creative, he can make that a part of the agreement with whoever's buying. This is something that I speculated on previously, that we have seen these kind of deals in the past. For instance, Endeavor, when they purchased UFC, they purchased the company, but they said they wished Dana White to remain as the president of the company. This could be a similar situation with WWE in whoever purchases them, where Vince McMahon having to have final approval on whoever purchases the company, on whoever he sells the company to. He could have a caveat in that agreement, in that transaction process, saying, I will only sell you the company if I remain on as the CEO and the head of creative for the product moving forward. Now, this is something that was expanded upon on Wrestling Observer Radio, with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez speaking on the matter. This is what Meltzer had to say, quote, I think the fact he is going to be the key person selling, he may be looking for assurances that he will be in charge. The thing with Vince is that if a deal was good for the stockholders with him not in charge, once it's sold, it's out of his hands, he's never getting back in. So he had to do a thing where I will not approve any sale unless it's the right terms, and they had to kind of accept him back and pretend that everything is all okay, because he has said basically that any negotiations for the next television deal or for the sale, if he wasn't put back in charge, he would hold it up. He would never agree to it. So it's kind of like they were handcuffed in a lot of ways. Brian Alvarez then said, quote, "I'm sure when a deal is negotiated, he's going to try and negotiate his way back in." Meltzer said, "Absolutely. The idea of Vince taking charge and everything like that, I don't see that happening for a couple of months. I don't think that's happening this week or anything like that. He basically filed a thing that said he's only going to be working when it comes to the sale or the TV deal. And as long as they are a public company, he does have to actually abide by that. But my gut is that once the sale is done, he will probably try to take over and get creative back. I think everyone kind of expects that. I don't expect those moves to be made right away, but of course, Vince wants to be head of creative, and Vince does have the power as far as to facilitate it. He probably at some point this year will have the ability to do it without having it to be a negative repercussion." Meltzer added that WWE looks to be trying to sell by the middle of this year, which would be before negotiations for the media rights begin. The new media rights will come into effect in October of next year, 2024, so negotiations will likely happen at the latter end of 2023, at which point the company would have already been sold and McMahon could be back in charge of creative if he negotiated it into the sale. Another option that has been at least mentioned would be the idea of taking WWE private again, which of course does have its pros and cons. As Meltzer explained, quote, "They are serious about selling now. They're going to be putting it up, but there's no guarantee that he has to sell. Obviously, the sale was his leverage for getting back in. There's been talk about going private, having the Saudi government buy the company and keep Vince in charge, then going private, which has a lot of benefits to them, but it takes away a lot. One of the reasons they went public, aside from the fact it made Vince a billionaire at times, and now he's probably worth $2 billion, maybe more, is that by going public, he has a lot of money, but also by being public, it made the company, they came from the wrestling business roots, which is not really looked well upon by the real world based on the history of wrestling. Nor should it have been. But aside from a small handful that you could probably count on one hand, if not two, but probably one hand, they weren't the most honest people known to mankind. And he thought that by going public, the family did, him and Linda both, when they went public, that it would give credibility to the business, stability to the business, and it would not make them looked upon so badly. But also, if they're not public, they don't have to give out all these numbers anymore. And also, if Vince does something, it's like it's nobody's business type of thing. This situation is because it's a public company. That's why the SEC is investigating, and that's why the Wall Street Journal wrote those articles. If it was a private company, you don't know they would have written those articles, and certainly SEC wouldn't be investigating them because they wouldn't have to file these things in a public forum. There are all still a lot of unanswered questions, but, and this isn't a surprise to anyone who knows anything about Vince McMahon, it certainly doesn't seem like it's going to be as simple as him walking in, selling, and walking out. As many people are speculating, this whole return to the company has been carefully calculated. This whole return to the company and being put back on the board of directors with the guise of, I'm just trying to help the stakeholders in the business. I'm just going to be here to help navigate a sale of the company and help negotiate the television rights or the media rights fees. It feels a bit false. There feels like there's more to it. Certainly the company could be sold, but at the same time, the feeling is that he may actually sell the company just so he can return to the company. That's what it kind of feels like. Now, WWE, with the return of McMahon, has now officially updated its public board of directors list after the return of Vince McMahon to his position on the board. McMahon used his power as majority owner of the company to put himself back on the board along with former WWE presidents Michelle Wilson and George Barrios. In doing so, McMahon removed, easy for me to say, Joe Ellen, Leon Stillen, Jeffrey R. Speed and Alan M. Wexler from their positions. However, upon McMahon's return, two further board members resigned on their own volition, as I mentioned before, that being Manjit Singh and also Ignacio Lahoud. WWE's corporate website has now updated its list of personnel to reflect the 9 remaining board members, as can be seen on the website. There's Vincent K. McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, Nick Khan, Paul Levesque, George Barrios, Steve Koonin, Michelle McKenna, Steve Pamon, and Michelle Wilson. As can be seen on the website, McMahon is listed as co-founder and former chairman and CEO of the company. The official leadership page on WWE's corporate website still does not list McMahon on the leadership team, and that it still is just Stephanie McMahon as chairwoman and co-CEO, Nick Khan as co-CEO, and Paul Levesque as chief content officer, Frank Riddick as president and chief financial officer, and Kevin Dunn as executive producer and chief global television distribution. So, what are your thoughts with this? Is this part of a big plan for Vince McMahon to gain full control once again, to be the CEO once again, to be the head of creative once again? Or is he being honest for the first time in his life, seemingly? Is he just back to negotiate a sale and negotiate the media rights deals? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Jay White has been linked with WWE recently amid speculation about his New Japan Pro Wrestling future. And an update has emerged on Jay White's New Japan status amid speculation that he will soon leave the promotion. White, of course, notably dropped his IWGP World Heavyweight Championship to Kazuchika Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 17 on January 4. The next night at New Year's Dash, White issued a challenge to Hikuleo for a loser leaves Japan bout. This fueled speculation that White is on his way out of New Japan. There have been rumors swirling that White will show up at the Royal Rumble later on this month on January 28. Per Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, White is booked for New Japan shows after January 28, indicating that he won't be a free agent in time for the Royal Rumble at least. WWE is reportedly interested in several New Japan stars, including White's future loser leaves Japan opponent Hikuleo, meaning that it could be more likely that Hikuleo loses that match. The company is reportedly also keeping an eye on Tama Tonga, who notably defeated WWE superstar Carl Anderson for the Never Openweight Championship at Wrestle Kingdom 17. New Japan President Takami Opari has announced a major update for the company's presence in the US, confirming that the strong brand will be rebuilt soon, amid discussion that it is going to end after the most recent set of television tapings. Money in the Bank, of course, is coming to the UK this year, something I'm very, very happy with. But we've got some more details as to why they selected the O2 and why they decided to come over to the UK for that big event in July. This comes from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, who says that WWE is running London's O2 Arena for WWE Money in the Bank, exciting UK fans, but also leaving some with questions. Fightful spoke to WWE sources about the announcement this week and asked about the decision to run the O2 as opposed to a stadium. With the success of Clash at the Castle at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, WWE would likely have easily been able to sell out any stadium for what they considered to be one of their big five shows. One WWE source said that they view the O2 Arena as the MSG of England, and it was the venue that they wanted to travel to. Another source indicated that running the show of this magnitude helps establish the importance of Money in the Bank as one of their biggest pay-per-views. There had been rumours that the show would go away altogether, but are told that wasn't actually really seriously considered. Also, contrary to rumours, it was reiterated to Fightful that no booking plans are set for Money in the Bank as of right now. The focus is on the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. While Nick Khan got credit for many of the dates, locations and venues that ended up being successful for WWE in 2022, Fightful were told that this time around it was more of a collaborative effort. Now, I must say, to say that the O2 is the MSG of England is a bit of a stretch. To be honest, I'm not sure that we really have an MSG of England. I mean, you would probably more look at real historic venues like the Royal Albert Hall and all that kind of stuff. That's really the MSG of England, you know, a venue that has, you know, hundreds of years of history in it. That's really what we're looking at. The O2 is not that. The O2 was built on the precipice of the millennium. That's really what it was. So I don't really don't think that's the case. I am surprised they didn't go over stadium because they would have sold it out easily. They would have sold it out, no problem whatsoever. So I'm quite surprised by that. Maybe if they wanted it to be in London, that made it difficult, i.e. if they wanted it to be at Wembley around May, that's kind of cup final time, so it would have been very difficult to do that. Maybe that plays a part of it. July. But even in July, actually thinking about it in the summer, they wouldn't really, I don't think, have had a problem. I can't think of anything that's going to be there during the summer of 2023, unless I'm mistaken. So that is quite surprising, but they decided they wanted to go in the O2, and tickets are going to be certainly a premium for that show. This is quite an interesting one because this does contain a bit of a spoiler, so spoilers ahead. But since Triple H took over the head of creative from Vince McMahon back in July, various former WWE and NXT stars have made their return to the company. It was recently reported that WWE had an interest in bringing back former NXT star EJ Nduka, known as Ezra Judge, in WWE. And Nduka was released from the company back in May of last year, 2021, and has been wrestling for MLW, where he is one half of the MLW Tag Team Champions alongside Calvin Tankman. Well, in interesting timing, that is no longer the case, and Nduka and Tankman lost their MLW Tag Team Championships to the Samoan SWAT team at the recent Blood and Thunder MLW tapings. And Nduka losing the championship, as well as him reportedly having interest from WWE and other promotions, would seem to hint that he's departing MLW soon. The match will air on an upcoming episode of MLW Fusion, so keep an eye out because the former NXT superstar could be set for a return to WWE. This is an interesting story. It'll be interesting to see who gets this. Sheamus and Drew McIntyre have doubled down on their hilarious new team name following SmackDown. Sheamus especially is currently on the run of his career, wrestling banger after banger after banger after banger. You get the idea. Well, on the January 6th episode, the Sheamus and McIntyre tag team revealed their new team name, inspired by Sheamus's consistency in the ring. Because they wrestle bangers, Sheamus and McIntyre will be now known as the Banger Brothers, or Banger Bros for short. Now, some people find that funny. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. In the main event of the episode, the Banger Brothers challenged the Usos for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships, but came up short after Jimmy Uso pinned Sheamus with a helping hand from Jey Uso. Of course, after the show, Sheamus and McIntyre were ambushed by the Viking Raiders, who dropped both stars with Ragnarok powerbombs. It would be assumed, certainly, we're going to get a Viking Raiders versus Banger Bros match in the near future. Finally, we spoke about this the other day, but it's now happened. Pretty Deadly made their main roster debuts over the weekend. Former NXT Tag Team Champions Pretty Deadly had not been active in WWE since a pair of tag losses in NXT, including losing their titles to the New Day's Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. Pretty Deadly re-emerged on Saturday at a WWE live event in Jackson, Mississippi, making their main roster debut in the process. The former NXT UK stalwarts interrupted former WWE champion Kofi Kingston while Kingston was addressing the crowd, chastising the reigning NXT Tag Team Champions as well as the crowd in the Mississippi Coliseum and challenging them to a match. Elton Prince and Kit Wilson were soundly defeated by the reigning champions in what appears to have been a non-title contest. Despite Pretty Deadly's aggression towards the New Day, Kingston recently had nothing but nice things to say about the young Brits, saying he and Wood want them to flourish, with Kingston even noted he wanted to tangle with the tandem sometime in the future. So, certainly, they made their main roster debuts. I think it's just a case of them getting familiar with, main roster work and main roster crowd and all that kind of stuff. I don't think they'll be caught up anytime soon, but anything's possible. I guess whilst the New Day hold those tag team championships, we could see some more NXT stars at least cameo on the main roster. So there you go. There you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.